The Malaysian rainforests are known for their mega diversity in plant and animal species and often cited as the world's final frontiers that could very well provide the remaining buffer for man and his survival against the advances of climate change. Within these deep, green and rain-fed forests lie treasures of plants, animals and organisms making up ecosystems that have been operating uninterrupted for more than 130 million years. Some of the occupants are documented and even celebrated, but many more a mystery behind the green canopy, reputed to be the oldest rainforest in the world. The endangered Malayan tigers, tapirs, elephants and rhinos, as well as the giant flower rafflesia, are only among some of the dwellers who share the space here, each with a role to play in a thriving, living forest. It was against such a backdrop that we found ourselves walking in as members of the Royal Belum Park Bird Expedition, a 3-day venture to document the sightings of the celebrated hornbill in Malaysia. Andrew Sebastian heads the communications unit for the Malaysian Nature Society, a pioneering and leading body that has been advocating environment-friendly economic policies and practices in the country. Conservation of animal and plant species is its core activity.
MNS has been involved in trying to conserve Royal Belum and the Temenggor Forest Complex from it being exploited in terms of timber and plantations. So for us to come up with an alternative, MNS has been pushing the agenda of conservation, but we are using ecotourism to be the driver. We're giving options. If we do not log this world's oldest forests, what can we do so that the locals will benefit and the name of Malaysia and the area becomes world famous? It won't be world famous if it's just another oil palm or rubber estate. It becomes world famous because it is one of a very special state park in the world. So MNS have been pushing the idea of promoting ecotourism activities there, namely bird watching. Because the reason why we are also calling it the hornbill capital of the world is because of its size. For this area to have all 10 of Malaysia's hornbills in that one area, and in the months of July, August, September to host 3 over 1,000 plain pouch hornbills that fly in from the north. With that numbers, we are declaring it the hornbill capital of the world. And that's why, with the help and support of the Perak State Park Corporation and the Royal Belum State Park, we organize the Royal Belum Bird Expedition.
We're headed to the eastern part of the man-made Temenggor Lake to record the number of birds sighted or heard. We have yet to spot one hornbill, although we have seen various other species flying in the lake area. A favorite resting spot for the birds seem to be the broken branches of trees lining the edge of the lake. Then we spot a bird on a broken tree branch. We move in closer to the lone bird. Excitement gets in the way and we fail to keep a lid on the exclamations or the noisy camera shutters, sending the bird on its flight. It's not a hornbill, the bird watcher in our team informs, and the venture to seek the bird continues as the boat speeds on to Sungai Kejar, our group's assigned area.
The Royal Belum State Park and Temenggor Forest Complex is home to all 10 of Malaysia's hornbill species. Worldwide there's 54, but in Malaysia, especially in this beautiful forest in Perak, we have 10 species. The 10 species are all protected by law and they make the forest their home. The interesting thing about these 10 species is almost all of them will need to use big trees which are only found in that forest for it to make its nest. The 10 Malaysian hornbills that we find in in the Belum Forest Complex, starting the smaller ones. They're all beautiful. Oriental pied hornbill, gregarious, they're always flying big flocks. Black hornbill, very beautiful, very loud call. The third one is the black bushy crested hornbill. Bushy crested hornbill again, just like its other two cousins, you see them flying in flocks of 6 or 10, sometimes 12 or 14. So they congregate their social animals. Then we go to the slightly bigger, medium-sized hornbills. The wreath hornbill has a beautiful jugular pouch, and its close cousin, the plain pouch hornbill, that's the ones that we see flying in thousands in Belum during the hornbill season. Next is the wrinkle hornbill. It is, I think, one of the rarer hornbills in Malaysia. It is found in wetlands area and peat swamps. Then we go to something a little bit more interesting, the white crown hornbill. It has a beautiful white head. People look at it and say, wow, so interesting. White crown, very bushy on its head and white tail. Amazing to see in the wild. Then we look at something a bit larger. We look at the rhinoceros hornbill. That's very famous because of its beautiful casque. The helmeted hornbill. Now this bird has one of the most amazing calls that you can ever hear in the rainforest. It starts with a single honk and it goes down to a cascading screech and yell and yelp. Something that can only be amazingly heard in that rainforest. I cannot describe it to you. And the last and not least is the great hornbill. The reason why it's called the great hornbill is because it's the largest. We share it with other countries in this specific region, namely Thailand and so on. But the great hornbill, the largest numbers have been seen in Malaysia, over 120 at one sitting. So Malaysia is home to all 10, or rather Royal Belum and Belum Temenggong is home to all 10 of Malaysian species. Only 8 are found in Borneo, but Royal Belum in Temenggong Forest Reserve and a small part of Ulu Muda in Kedah, they are home to all 10 species of Malaysian hornbills.
The Royal Belum State Park in the northern part of Perak is part of an even wider continuous forest complex, the Belum Temenggong Forest, including the Temenggong Forest on the southern part. The 15,200 hectare Temenggong Lake was created with the construction of a dam in the heart of the forest complex. Unlike the adjacent Temenggong Forest, which is a production forest where logging is active, the Belum State Park is relatively untouched. Its continued preservation is of utmost importance, and Andrew gives an insight and explains why.
The Royal Belum and Temenggong Forest Complex, it is quite rightly perceived as one of the few remaining frontiers for wildlife and plants. The main range of Peninsular Malaysia has been vastly segregated and isolated from each other. So instead of having one beautiful forest patch where animals are free to roam, we have highways and townships and plantations, all separating the natural forest that we have right now. So from the south, the Taman Negara and Romping. In the middle, we have Taman Negara and the main range of Titiwangsa. And right on top, in the north, we have Royal Belum and Temenggong. These three landscapes, for example, used to host or hold within the last remaining colony of the Javan and the Sumatran rhino. The Javan rhino has now been extinct since 1930s. We only seem to have the Sumatran rhino in our rainforest on the main range, going between south and north. There has not been any recent records of the Sumatran rhino, for example, in Endaromping in recent times. Neither has there been any new sightings of the rhino in Taman Negara in the middle. Royal Belum and Temenggong is known to be an area where the Sumatran rhino seems or should be still surviving. So it is very urgent that this area be kept as is. We need to preserve this area because of the hopes that the Sumatran rhino are still found in this area. And apart from the Sumatran rhino, all the big animals that we have in our naturally in our rainforest, the wild hogs, the Asian elephants, the Malayan tiger. They all make Belum Temenggong their home because these are all lowland, hilly terrains, beautiful home to things even like the Malayan sun bear. So, at this being one of the last remaining contiguous forests or islands of forests, as I would say, it draws us to the conclusion that we need to urgently protect it as it is right now, because more and more we take more and more from this forest, less and less will be able to survive in this.
No hornbill in our sight yet, but we do learn later that there had been sightings of plain pouched hornbills by 2 other groups. The day is not over yet, but it gets dark and cold soon. We pass some young, giggling Orang Asal children rowing away on their canoe. We pass the homes of the young children, the Sungai Kejar Orang Asal settlement, as we head back to our boathouse. It has been a long day. For some, the journey started at dawn in Kuala Lumpur, 200 miles south of the forest park. As soon as we had cleared security at the front gate of the park, we were taken in our respective boats to our temporary home, a houseboat parked at Sungai Tiang. Then a quick lunch and briefings before we had set out to sight the birds. An hour back, each team reports what they had seen for the day. More than 300 birds of various species have been sighted and heard in the few hours, including the sighting of over 200 of the globally threatened plain-pouched birds in their flight, a great hornbill, a kingfisher, smooth otters and green pigeons. Not a big number, says one expedition member. I wonder why.
Well, from our initial observations, although it is the world's oldest rainforest, older reputedly than the Congo and Amazon basin, people are expecting to see a lot of birds and wildlife. So from the expedition that we ran one in Temenggong the year before, and we just had one now in Royal Belum. From the information that we've gathered during that short activities that we had, people going around and counting birds for us, number seems to not be as high as we had expected, both in terms of birds as well as hornbills. For birds, I think it's seasonal. We are not really sure, and that's why we need to continuously study the area, because if a certain area of the forest is in fruit, for example, all the birds will converge there. And if you are not at that same place, we will not see a lot of types of birds. So that could be one reason why we didn't see as many birds that we were hoping to see. But there seemed to be a lot of logging and forest clearing activities happening in the Temenggong Forest Reserve. A big portion of that forest reserve is a production forest, so it is being developed right now. It has been logged over. It is scientifically proven that a logged forest, plantations and logged forests, can house a less number of species of birds per acre than a natural rainforest.
Vici, do you think you'll see a hornbill tomorrow?
I don't know. I sure hope so.
Boss, did you hear that?
Yes, I did. God, what is that? Is it a frog?
I sure hope so.
You never know. We're in the middle of a jungle. You heard about the legend of the dragon in Tasik Chini?
Good night, Vici.
Good night, Sean. The day begins early and we're hopeful. We head to Papan where there is a forest trail. I'm looking forward to getting closer to the trees. Birdwatcher Tang laments about logging activities nearby and how it is doing the trees and the birds in. Tall trees are important, he says.
First, that will reflect on the health of the forest itself. You see, if there's excessive logging, then that will deprive the hornbills of a place to nest and propagate the next generation. You see, hornbills need all trees, and they always make nest in a place where there's a split or a hole. So when these tall trees have been chopped down for timber, that's the end of it. They propagate by distributing the seeds all over the jungle. Because they fly all over. So that's a way that particular species of fruit trees has been propagated.
The head of Hornbill Conservation for MNS, outlines the bigger picture of the hornbills and why they're known as the forest farmers or the hornbills. He says a hornbill can grow on 1,000 trees in its lifetime.
The term forest farmers for hornbills came about based on years of research that was done by Dr. Pillai and her team in Thailand, and also I think Indonesia also as well. Now hornbills, they consume fruits. Most of the hornbills consume fruits, although during certain part of their lives they do consume meat, animals, birds and whatnot. And in a forest, in their optimum habitat, they consume many types of fruits, right? And based on the research, they found that hornbills consume a large percentage of fruits from different kinds of plant families. In Belum Rainforest, we have observed that a large majority of the hornbills in Belum Rainforest consume figs. Figs, the scientific name generally is called ficus, and there are many types or species of figs in Belum Rainforest, and they can range from the smallest, which is smaller than a 5-cent coin, and some even as big as a 50-cent coin. Now, as a result of eating a myriad of fruits, right? So what happens is when the fruit gets eaten, they will fly from that fruiting tree to another place. And during that process, they will probably defecate. So the seed will drop at another place, and hopefully, if conditions are right, then that seed will flourish. So in a way, hornbills are like helping to sow the seeds of the fruits at different parts of the forest. So in a sense, perhaps that kind of mimics the role of a farmer. Farmer plants, nurtures, and hopefully you'll get a crop.
Meanwhile, day 2 gets interesting. How to record these birds when they fly at the very hint of human activity miles away.
Yeah, that sounds like and then actually sometimes even you don't see it, you can hear it flying. That's good enough. The sound of the wing flapping.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, fly also good. You want to fly, right? That's right.
We feel lucky as another bird comes in sight, a local raptor. But is it a grey or changeable hawk eagle? The bird fan gets close to confirm it, while I manage a shot, I think. The emerald green waters continue to amaze. The rest facilities in Sungai Papan is courtesy of the Perak Forest Corporation. We're now a couple of hours away from our home, the boathouse. We catch the sight of a white-throated blue kingfisher as we journey further. Wow, I exclaim, but G says I can find it in Subang. Oops. The consummate bird watcher does not take things for granted, least of all, the memory of a bird's call.
I'm trying to listen to, can't remember the call of the bird.
Oh.
Just want to see, I can recognize the call by breathing back.
I see. What are the various sounds that you know about there?
There is a sound because I cannot remember what's it called. I hear before.
I
I
see.
know roughly what they are.
Oh, I see. By just the sounds they make?
Yeah, I just hearing the sound.
Can you make some sounds for me? Like,
I don't know how to whistle. You you know. The only thing I go boop, 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 boop. That is that's how the golden hantu.
oh.
Call it our boop, 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 boop.
There are gadgets, then there are human ears. Listen carefully.
Who's that? The rhinoceros?
No, listen.
Not that. There is a monkey here. Come on. This is rhino.
Like this, you know, the birds won't come out,
Okay.
right? So he uses this device to make the call like this collet outlet.
Mm-hmm.